Every few years, something sits quietly on a shelf in millions of homes around the world, not because of a flashy marketing campaign, not because a celebrity endorsed it, but because real people keep experiencing real results with it. And when the science finally catches up, even the skeptics go silent. That substance is apple cider vinegar. And I want to be upfront with you today. This is not a video about magic, hype, or overnight transformations. This is a video about the precise biological reasons why this fermented liquid can genuinely support your weight loss journey. Explained the way a doctor explains it, not the way a wellness influencer does. My name is Dr. David Hart, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening inside your body when you take apple cider vinegar, from the cellular level all the way up to the number you see on the scale. Stay with me. The hidden roadblock to weight loss most people overlook. Before we talk about why apple cider vinegar works, we need to understand the underlying problem it solves, because you cannot fix what you have not correctly identified. Most weight loss advice zeroes in on calories. Eat less, move more. And while energy balance absolutely matters, there is a layer beneath that equation that receives almost no attention: your body's metabolic signaling environment. Specifically, how efficiently your cells are receiving and responding to the hormone insulin. Here is what happens when insulin sensitivity degrades, which it does gradually with age, with chronic stress, with poor sleep, and with diets high in refined carbohydrates. Your pancreas releases insulin after you eat. Normally, that insulin would unlock your muscle and liver cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream for energy. But when those cells become less responsive, insulin has to work harder. More of it gets released, and elevated insulin does one very specific thing that makes weight loss brutally difficult. It instructs your fat cells to store energy rather than release it. You can be exercising daily and eating in a caloric deficit and still struggle to lose fat if your insulin signaling is dysregulated. That is the hidden ceiling, and addressing it is where apple cider vinegar begins to demonstrate its value. Meet the molecule, what acetic acid actually does. Apple cider vinegar is produced through a two-stage fermentation process. Crushed apples are first converted by yeast into alcohol, and then specific bacteria transform that alcohol into acetic acid. That final compound, acetic acid, is the biologically active ingredient responsible for virtually every meaningful effect you will hear attributed to apple cider vinegar. Now I want to introduce you to something that most wellness content never mentions, and it is the most important piece of this entire conversation. It's called AMPK, AMP-activated protein kinase. Think of AMPK as your body's master metabolic switch. When AMPK is activated, your cells shift out of storage mode and into fuel-burning mode. It promotes fat oxidation, the breakdown of stored fat for energy. It suppresses lipogenesis, the conversion of excess carbohydrates into new fat deposits. It improves glucose uptake by muscles without requiring additional insulin. And it enhances mitochondrial function, meaning your cells produce energy more efficiently. Research published in peer-reviewed biochemistry journals has demonstrated that acetic acid, the primary compound in apple cider vinegar, activates AMPK in both liver and skeletal muscle tissue. In practical terms, this means that consuming apple cider vinegar creates cellular conditions that favor burning fat over storing it, and that effect is independent of how much you have eaten that day. This is not folklore. This is cellular biochemistry, and it is the foundation of why this simple liquid has such wide-ranging metabolic effects. The blood sugar connection, why your cravings are not weakness. Let me describe a cycle that I see playing out in my patients' lives constantly, and possibly in yours too. You eat a meal containing refined carbohydrates. Your blood sugar rises sharply. Insulin floods in to manage that rise. Blood sugar then drops, sometimes below baseline, and within an hour or two, you are hungry again. Not because you lack willpower, because your glucose regulation triggered a hormonal hunger signal. This cycle, repeated multiple times a day, drives overconsumption in ways that have nothing to do with discipline. Here is where apple cider vinegar intervenes directly. The acidity of acetic acid, when present in the digestive tract during a meal, slows the rate at which the stomach empties its contents into the small intestine. This is called delayed gastric emptying, and its effect on blood sugar is significant. When carbohydrates are released more gradually into the gut, the resulting glucose absorption is slower and more controlled. The blood sugar curve flattens. Insulin response is moderated. The sharp rise and crash cycle is interrupted. Multiple clinical studies have confirmed that consuming vinegar with or before a carbohydrate-containing meal can meaningfully reduce post-meal blood glucose and insulin levels. One body of evidence suggests insulin sensitivity improvements of nearly 20 to 34% during high-carbohydrate meals when vinegar is consumed alongside them. What does that mean for weight loss? Fewer insulin spikes means fewer fat storage signaling. More stable glucose means fewer hunger surges. You naturally eat less, not because you are forcing yourself to, but because the biochemical drivers of overeating have been quieted. How your hunger hormones shift. Weight gain is not simply a calorie problem, it is also a hormone problem, and two hormones in particular sit at the intersection of appetite and fat accumulation. Ghrelin is your primary hunger hormone. It rises before meals, signals the brain that the body needs fuel, and drives you to seek out food. When ghrelin remains chronically elevated, as it often does in people with poor sleep, high stress, or disrupted glucose metabolism, the sensation of hunger becomes persistent and harder to override. Acetic acid appears to modulate ghrelin activity, helping to reduce its elevation after a meal and extending the window of satiety. Simultaneously, animal model research has shown that acetate stimulates the release of gut-derived satiety hormones, including GLP-1 and peptide YY from specialized cells lining the intestinal wall. These hormones travel to the brain and register as fullness signals, reducing the motivation to continue eating. The practical consequence is this. People who consume apple cider vinegar before meals consistently report eating less at those meals, not because they are counting calories, but because the biochemical drivers of overeating have been quieted. A 2025 systematic review and meta-analysis examining randomized controlled trials involving over 800 adult participants found that regular apple cider vinegar consumption produced statistically significant reductions in body weight and waist circumference compared to control groups, with higher daily doses showing stronger effects. The belly fat question and the liver you cannot see. Not all body fat carries the same metabolic risk. The fat stored just beneath your skin, subcutaneous fat, is relatively benign. The fat that surrounds your internal organs, visceral fat, is a different matter entirely. Visceral fat is metabolically active in harmful ways. It releases inflammatory compounds, disrupts hormone signaling, and is strongly associated with insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes. The encouraging finding from recent clinical research is that apple cider vinegar appears to have a preferential effect on visceral fat reduction. The AMPK activation pathway we discussed earlier specifically targets fat oxidation in liver and adipose tissue, precisely where visceral fat accumulates. Clinical trial data suggests that participants consuming apple cider vinegar daily over 12 to 16 weeks experienced reductions in waist circumference that exceeded those seen in control groups, indicating that the fat being lost was disproportionately visceral in nature. There is also a liver dimension to this conversation. The liver is a central hub of fat metabolism, When it is overwhelmed, as it can be in people with high sugar diets or significant visceral fat accumulation, it begins storing fat within its own tissue, a condition that compounds insulin resistance. Acetic acid has been shown in biochemical research to inhibit the genetic pathways responsible for fat synthesis in the liver, while simultaneously promoting fat breakdown. This is not a peripheral effect, it is a direct intervention at the site where metabolic health is regulated. What the research actually says, and what it does not. I want to be intellectually honest with you here because I think that is what you deserve from a physician. The evidence supporting apple cider vinegar for weight loss is real, but it is not a standalone solution. The most carefully conducted trials show modest but meaningful reductions in body weight, typically in the range of 2 to 4 pounds over 12 weeks of consistent use, alongside measurable improvements in metabolic markers, such as fasting blood glucose, triglyceride levels, and waist circumference. What apple cider vinegar does exceptionally well is optimize the hormonal and cellular environment in which your other weight loss efforts operate. It improves insulin sensitivity so that your dietary choices produce better metabolic outcomes. It reduces appetite signaling so that caloric restriction feels less like deprivation. It activates fat-burning pathways so that the weight your body does lose comes preferentially from fat stores rather than lean tissue. Think of it as removing biological friction from the weight loss process. Your effort goes further because the cellular environment is working with you rather than against you. The correct way to use it: protocol and safety. Based on the clinical research and what I recommend to my own patients, here is the protocol that makes the most sense. Dosage: 2 teaspoons to 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar diluted in at least 8 ounces of water. Do not exceed 2 tablespoons per day. Raw and unfiltered ensures the full organic acid profile is intact. Timing: consume it 15 to 20 minutes before your 2 largest meals of the day. This timing maximizes both the gastric emptying effect and the pre-meal appetite suppression before your blood sugar has a chance to spike. My enhanced daily tonic. For those who want the build on the base protocol, I personally use the following combination: 2 teaspoons raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar, 1 teaspoon cold-pressed organic lemon juice, a thumb-sized portion of freshly grated ginger or pure ginger extract, 8 to 10 ounces of water at room temperature. The lemon adds additional citric acid and enzymatic activity. The ginger provides thermogenic support and further aids gastric motility. Together, they create a compounding effect that enhances what the apple cider vinegar initiates. Critical safety note: never consume apple cider vinegar undiluted. The acidity is sufficient to erode tooth enamel and irritate the esophageal lining with repeated direct contact. Always dilute, use a straw if possible, and rinse your mouth with plain water afterward. If you are on medication for diabetes, blood pressure, or diuretics, consult your physician before beginning regular use. Acetic acid can interact with how these medications behave in the body. Weight loss is rarely about finding the one thing that changes everything. It is about systematically addressing the biological obstacles that stand between where you are and where you want to be. Apple cider vinegar does not replace a sound nutritional strategy or physical activity. What it does is work on the cellular and hormonal obstacles that conventional advice ignores entirely. It activates the metabolic switch that tells your body to burn rather than store. It quiets the hormonal signals that drive unnecessary hunger. It flattens the blood sugar swings that undermine your best dietary intentions. And it targets the visceral fat that poses the greatest risk to your long-term health. That is the real reason it works, not magic, mechanism. If you found this valuable, share it with someone who has been struggling to lose weight despite doing everything right. Sometimes the missing piece is not willpower, it's biochemistry. I'm Dr. David Hart. Take care of your health. I'll see you in the next video.